Pop punk is a genre of music that encapsulates the essence of teen angst, first loves, and transitioning into adulthood. The name comes from a mix of the terms pop rock and punk rock and can be traced all the way back to the early 70s, where bands like the Ramones, Generation X, and the Buzzcocks are seen as early pioneers for the genre. Characterized by its fast-paced, energetic tempos, and an emphasis on traditional pop songwriting as well as adolescent and anti-suburbia themes, it really distinguished itself from other punk-inspired genres by drawing more heavily from the 1960s bands such as the Beatles, the Kinks, and the Beach Boys. Its fusion of pop music's catchy hooks and punk rock's rebellious spirit created a sound that's both fun and relatable, like a burst of energy that makes you just want to sing along and jump around. And while the bands I mentioned before are some of the greats, and you should check them out if you haven't, it wasn't really until the mid-90s, early 2000s where pop punk started to find its own aesthetic and niche quirks within its community that really set it apart from everything else. And in 2005, the genre would hit its peak, leading to either plateauing or declining sales in the genre as a whole during any time period after. Even with the mid-2010s pop punk's not dead renaissance, the genre has never managed to reach the same popularity it once had. So today, stick around, because today we're looking back on how pop punk hit its peak in 2005 and answering the question once and for all, is pop punk dead? Well, before we get into the year 2005, let's look at some of the years before, to really get an understanding of the genre. Like I said in the intro, pop punk has been around since the mid-70s, but didn't really start to find its own niche until the mid to late 90s when bands like Green Day, Blink-182, and The Offspring started to garner mainstream attention and therefore kind of unintentionally were the poster boys for the genre, especially Blink-182. These bands were full of high-energy, fun skater anthems that mainly tackled issues of growing up, young love, and dealing with your parents. Wearing your heart on your sleeve was the norm for these guys, much of which was inspired by the early pop punk bands they were listening to, like the Ramones, Descendants, and The Cure. It was also a time where a lot of younger men didn't want to conform to the norm or even really relate to it. They were okay hugging their buddies, making silly little dick jokes, saying I love you in a joking way, talking about their girlfriends, and having a passion to pursue art. All of these things, trivial or not, make up what a typical pop punk listener was and how we perceive them in the media. Something a lot of people don't mention either is all of these sounding bands were literally from California, which is why we associate a lot of bright cheeriness and skater culture with the genre. And quite obviously, some might say, it wouldn't take long for the genre to start being adopted mainly by teens and young adults, which in turn though would take it to new levels, with it being used in video games and movies. Add all of that onto Green Day's iconic Woodstock performance, and help from more bands popping up, it would seem like just overnight, teens didn't care about grunge anymore and were totally in on this pop punk wave. And that would lead to a surge of new bands who were inspired by that. I mean, just between 1995 and 99, bands like Sum 41, New Found Glory, Saves the Day, and even Simple Plan were formed. Which leads me to the next little bit of history we need to understand. The early 2000s pop punk scene. All of those bands I just mentioned were finally getting their footing and coming out to the media. And the new millennium gave us some immediate bangers. In just 2000 and 2001, we got hits like Little Things, All the Small Things, In Too Deep, The Middle, Hit or Miss, and Minority. A banger time for music. And it didn't stop there, because between 2002 and 2003 we got even more, like The Anthem, Ocean's Avenue, My Friends Over You, Still Waiting. I mean, it's referred to as the golden age of the genre for a reason. But yes, anyone can just name off some of the most popular songs from that time, but why does it matter? Well, because when we look back into this era of pop punk, starting with Green Day and Blink, going all the way up into New Found Glory and Simple Plan, what do they all have in common? Well, they're kind of just dudes being dudes, you know? Just bros, man. And no, it sounds funny, but that's really what it was. Well, yes, girls did enjoy the music also when it was coming out. That was not what it was associated with, really. I mean, this was the music for kids who played too much Tony Hawk and Need for Speed, drank way too much soda, were way too into Jackass and South Park, and all had those obnoxious friends that they did it all with every day. That music defined 2000s teen and college boy aesthetics. I mean, literally, listen to the soundtrack to movies like American Pie, Dude Where's My Car, or Road Trip. They're all filled with pop-punk music. What was in the background of the Jackass films, or even kid shows like Drake and Josh and Zack and Cody? Pop-punk music. What was the name of Blink-182's 2 documentaries they came out with during this time? Oh yeah, the Urethra Chronicles Part 1 and Part 2. I mean, it just seemed like this music was made for edgy teens who could honestly probably use a shower. And that seemed to be where it ultimately peaked. In 2004, we did get a few more bangers, but from here we can already sense a deep shift in tones from the bands we were used to. Green Day and Blink went from making West Coast skater anthems to more serious songs like American Idiot and I Miss You. Whereas bands like Simple Plan and Yellowcard really kicked up the teen angst and emotional stuff in their music to a max. But there was something else that would be released in 2004, something that would seemingly come just as out of nowhere as pop punk itself did. And that would be 3 Cheers for Sweet Revenge. While yes, MCR did have one project before this would be the one to put them in the mainstream, currently having sold 1.4 million copies, with it peaking at number 28 on the US Billboard Hot 100 chart when it released. And this would really set the stage for a year that would totally revolutionize the genre yet again. Just as pop punk had found its home in a hyperactive skater bro niche, it was about to get a total rebrand and shift into a dark emo kid / theater kid era. And as if trying to warn us, New Found Glory would release one more single in 2004 titled All Downhill From Here. So what was so special about 2005, you're asking? Well, the success of 3 Cheers for Sweet Revenge really did have a huge impact on the culture. Being mostly known for silly themes and nonsensical videos, My Chemical Romance came in with a sound that pop punk listeners were familiar with and enjoyed, but was being presented to them with a whole new range of topics like death, war, politics, mental health, and was being brought to us by guys wearing all black skinny jeans and makeup. I mean, it was totally out of left field at the time. And on top of that, these guys were also passionate about other forms of art like comics and what we would eventually find out, TV. And yet somehow under all that, they managed to take the iconic pop punk sound and mix it with some alternative and metal aesthetics. They didn't give a fuck. They were here to make music with a message and spread it to the masses. They didn't care what they looked like. They didn't care what you thought they looked like. They were just being themselves. Emotional young men who didn't want to conform to societal norms, but definitely had some opinions about them. And it resonated with a whole new wave of kids who felt unheard and not seen before, who wanted to have fun but also acknowledge the serious parts of life, and on top of that, make changes to them. And stuff that was seriously happening that these newer bands cared about at the time was social issues. That 2000s boy culture was dying, and partially for good reason. While presented as bright and cheery like I said earlier, it's always been riddled with sexism, racism, homophobia, and hardcore drug use. I mean, we all know it was the norm to just be those things in the early 2000s. Objectifying women and making gay jokes were sadly things that a majority of pop punk skater boys at the time were into. And My Chemical Romance were here to tell you they were over it. Alright, now that we have an understanding of what pop punk was like before the year 2005, let's move on to music from the year specifically and see how the themes and aesthetics from it impacted the culture. Starting with one of the bigger, most iconic albums from this era, Fall Out Boy's From Under the Cork Tree. This album was an absolute mega success, selling over 7 million records worldwide as of today, making it a certified 2X platinum album. And on top of that, it's still their best selling album ever. Being led by the single Sugar We're Going Down, which is now 8 times platinum, and the other follow-up hit Dance Dance, these songs were everywhere you went. This absolutely propelled Fall Out Boy into stardom. In an interview with AOL Magazine in 2005, the band's tour manager goes on to explain how they would get recognized by a few people here and there on the regular before, but after this album, they couldn't be left alone without a horde of fans mobbing them for autographs. All of this would be fueled by a spot on the 2005 Vans Warped Tour, a performance at that year's MTV VMAs, and 2 iconic music videos for both the singles. The band's look was a huge part of that influence, being one of the first times we as an entire culture started changing the word nerd from someone who studies all day with glasses and wears button-up shirts and stuff, to instead encapsulate people who were into theater, had dyed hair, and were really into internet culture. And above all, listened to either pop punk or emo music. These songs gave people empowerment, to feel like they could do whatever they wanted, even if they might not be the most popular kid at school at the time. And with the meteoric rise of the airplay, it really felt like these kids and young adults were being backed by a cool underground part of the world. And this would open the door for many more artists. Like this artist who dropped one of the most iconic pop punk albums of all time, Panic at the Disco's A Fever You Can't Sweat Out. I mean, as of today, this album has sold more than 4 million copies, making it 4 times platinum. It's truly iconic, and it's really the main gateway into how theater kids slowly started adopting pop punk. It was like a package of stuff nobody had just even thought of yet. It had pop punk guitar riffs, emotional piano, and very theatrical aesthetics. This would propel Brendan Urie into the limelight, with the music video for I Write Sins having regular airplay on TRL. And it would give kids a whole new look they would want to try to emulate. Next, let's go into the All-American Rejects' second studio album, Move Along, which had hits on it like the title track Move Along, It Ends Tonight, and of course, Dirty Little Secret. The latter of which would become a certified anthem for anyone between the ages of 13 to 16. The All-American Rejects were more of an established band than Fall Out Boy at this point when their album dropped, with the song you're all thinking of having dropped in 2002. But I wanted to showcase this one, as we can see that even bands that were all in on the fun, slightly raunchy pop punk progressed with the genre to make more slow, emotional, sad songs. Another huge project we need to talk about from this year, selling close to 500,000 copies, is Paramore's All We Know Is Falling. While not only just being one of the first female-led pop punk bands ever, Paramore came in hot with their own style and vibe too. It still followed with the trend of discussing more serious topics with those same familiar pop punk riffs, but with the edginess and emotions turned up to the max. And this was a game changer for the genre. With songs like Emergency and Pressure, it led for a whole new wave of younger girls to feel seen and represented within the community. And that's something I want to talk about briefly too, as how this seemed to be the time when girls really started coming into the fandom also. While, of course, like I said earlier, there's always at least one kind of person into something and you should never judge, pop punk was really fueled by male fans in the early 2000s. I mean, if you were to go to a Blink-182, Green Day, or Sum 41 concert back then, you were almost more than likely going to be surrounded by sweaty, rowdy boys. And for some reason, it wouldn't be until My Chemical Romance, Panic at the Disco, and Fall Out Boy who would really start to grow cult fan followings with teen girls similar to that of a boy band. The point where the media's idea of a pop punk listener went from a skater boy to an emo fangirl. And just like how punk fans used to make fun of pop punk kids for not being punk enough, now old school pop punk fans were making fun of this new stuff for being too emo. Kind of ironic. But not totally wrong. While the social acceptance aspect of it was getting a lot better, it definitely was starting to get more emotional, handling deeper topics, which was kind of the epitome of what the genre originally was created to be. It was led by people who only cared about having fun, whether that's getting high and skating all day, or drinking sobe and making dick jokes with your friends. Never in those kids' wildest dreams would they be seen wearing super tight clothing, makeup, or having like real emotional conversations together that'll make them cry. I mean, that's what punk and grunge was, for Christ's sakes. The thing they wanted to be different from. But whether it's just growing up or trying to stay relevant within the scene, that's exactly what these bands would end up doing. Green Day's American Idiot would go on to tackle much more serious political issues in the old school 70s punk aesthetic, while Blink-182 would drop their self-titled album, which discussed darker themes of emotional trauma from losing someone, whether it be in a relationship or due to death. New Found Glory would lean heavily into the theatrical aesthetics, even covering multiple songs from musicals over their career, and Sum 41 proudly transformed into a metal alternative rock band tackling issues of politics, religion, and alcoholism. And just like that, we entered a new era. Well, we've come to the main point of this entire video. Was 2005 really the last year for pop punk? Well, I guess it depends on how you look at it. Do we take all the things I mentioned earlier about how early pop punk was meant to be sort of this anti-growing up, always having fun vibe, and consider that the point where the genre was at its truest form? And then from there we make a clear cutoff in 2005 saying emo music isn't pop punk? Well, no, of course not, because obviously we can sit here today and agree that Fall Out Boy is pop punk, right? All Time Low is pop punk, Panic at the Disco is pop punk, Paramore is pop punk, and even if those bands all have their own distinctive sound that encompasses a totally different niche, I mean, we can all sit here and agree that it's pop punk. A lot of good pop punk bands have come after them too, especially out of the Pop Punk's Not Dead era, like my personal favorite State Champs, and others like We Are the In Crowd, Neon Trigger, and Overgrow, and many, many more. But if we can agree that all of that is pop punk, then when did it die? Yes, it got heavily sidelined during the EDM R&B craze between 2009 to 2013, which I covered in its own video you can check out here. There were still good albums from those years. All Time Low's Nothing Personal in 2009, Danger Days by MCR in 2010, Suburbia I've Given You My All and Now I'm Nothing by the Wonder Years in 2011. It's not like we were depleted of pop punk music. We were just kind of too busy hating the ones we used to love. Case in point, Fall Out Boy. Instead of upcoming new pop punk bands in the mainstream, we decided to hate all over Fall Out Boy's Save Rock and Roll. And if you feel called out here, don't feel bad, because I was one of the people who was a hater online. I thought they sold out, and they didn't care about us or the genre anymore. 5 years since a Fall Out Boy album and we get this? Come on, man. While it was a good move for them, myself and many other people were hating it online. And since these bands were more established at this point, it was easier for them to get airplay on radios and TV, just inserting it into our heads how much the stuff we loved was just changing. Leading to a weird period for the genre for a few years, where people were kinda just confused or angry. Not to mention by this point, emo culture had become an entire meme in and of itself, and you had bands like MCR publicly denouncing the word emo, and Green Day denouncing the term pop punk. People didn't know what to think anymore. But this would eventually lead to a wave of people in 2015-2016 starting to make YouTube videos centered around pop punk themes, mainly out of nostalgia, but in turn it led to pop punk slowly being more and more ingrained within internet culture, leading to the Pop Punk's Not Dead revival we all know and have probably seen once. Now the days of emo are gone, and we're bringing back a mix of everything from all of pop punk. Pizza parties, hanging with friends, being young, dumb, and in love, dealing with serious mental health issues, doing drugs. It was just all normal for us in this new era. So no, I guess pop punk isn't dead. It is still very much around, but it's not the same as it was when it first started. And you will always hear people saying that it's not going to be the same, and that every new band now is either a sellout or a pussy or just not good. It's how fans of 80s rap think that hip-hop died with Eminem, right? Even though it clearly did not. But some people truly believe that. And at the end of the day, we're kind of all just sacks of bones with stupid little opinions in our heads trying to get by. But I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you did, maybe drop a like and subscribe so you can be notified when I upload more. And comment your thoughts on this topic. When do you think pop punk died? Did it ever die? Did it ever alive? Or wait. Either way, I appreciate you all so much. If you're looking for more nostalgic content, make sure to check out the Look Back playlist over here somewhere that has videos full of millennial and Gen Z nostalgia. And I'm really happy to get this year kicked off. So I will see you in the next one, guys. Peace.